this is our first day of our new science unit, Light and Shadows. So I'm just going to show you a video to get you kind of into what we're going to talk about.
These lights are created by animals. This is bioluminescence. A deep sea anglerfish flashes in the night. The light is generated by bacteria that live permanently inside the lure, which attracts prey to these murderous teeth. There are all sorts of lures out in the darkness. What is the purpose of this lure, suspended on a long rod way below its owner's terrifying set of teeth? It's difficult to be sure. But then this monster does have another giant flashing lure much closer to its mouth. These fish are called anglers because they use their lures in much the same way as fly fishermen use their imitation flies. For a hunting squid with huge eyes, this glimmer is intriguing. It might just be food. A satisfying meal for a fish with a highly extendable stomach.
Perfect. So, while you were watching the video, I wrote 2 questions on the board. So, if you can just take 1 minute and think about those questions, and then at the end of the 1 minute, we'll talk about them with a partner. Okay, so now with your elbow partner, talk about the 2 questions, and I have a 1 minute timer set. Go ahead.
So, as far as my understanding is, bioluminescence is a naturally occurring like chemical reaction inside the fish that makes them glow. But it can happen in other plants and animals too.
That's more than my understanding.
I know. Yeah.
That makes sense, both. It's like a natural chemical reaction happening in it.
What she said.
And what makes the fish glow is bioluminescence.
Perfect. Okay. So, as part of the Kagan structure, so we did think, pair, and now share. So I'll just ask you what you think bioluminescence is. Anybody have any ideas?
Yeah, like basically what I said in my group was that it was a chemical reaction taking place inside the animal, like the fish, to generate light.
Awesome. Good job. And then what makes the fish glow?
We thought we heard in the video that bacteria can make the fish glow.
Yeah. So the textbook definition of bioluminescence is the ability of organisms to produce and emit light through a chemical reaction. So that's where the bacteria comes in, that releases energy that produces light. So now we're going to move on to the first segment. So we have some new vocabulary words for you guys. So the first one is luminescence. So it's kind of the same as bioluminescence, but what do you think luminescence is?
Just light in general.
Emanating light.
Yeah. So it's the emission of light by a substance caused by a chemical reaction or electrical energy. And then there's two different forms of light we're going to talk about. So natural versus artificial light. So what do you guys think the difference is?
Natural's made by nature.
Yeah, good job. So natural light is produced by items in nature, and then artificial light is from a man-made source produced by battery or electricity. So now we're going to talk about some of the differences by using a Venn diagram. So I'm just going to go over to the board. And then I'll just shorten it a little bit, so I'll just draw it on. And then on my lesson plan, I have like the answers. So I would just like draw it on the board and then get kids to write. So I'm not actually doing it. Okay. And then so once we did that, my 2 activity is I would hand out whiteboards to each student and then show them this presentation. And then each image that comes up, they have to write on their whiteboard if it's natural or artificial light. So as an example, we'll go through a few. So the first one is the sun. So then they would write the answer if it's natural or artificial and then hold it up so I can see everyone's answers. So it's a bit of checking for understanding. And then after a few seconds, then I would show them the answer, so it's natural light. And then the next one is this picture of glowing water, which is little plankton. And then the answer is natural light, and then I could talk about what it is, because it kind of just looks like glowing water. So I have some examples of that. So I have 12 examples of that for that activity. And then moving on to the next segment. So I would introduce 2 new words, which are emit and reflect. So the same way I did with the other 2 words, I would just ask the students if they knew what they mean or not. And emit means to produce something, and then reflect is to throw something back or not absorb it or not produce it. So there's a few different ways to explain it. And then I would have students brainstorm with their older partners how these 2 words relate to light, so what kind of the connection is, because this is connecting the 2 outcomes I have in my lesson. And then I have a short video to show emit and reflect.
Light from the sun during the day, and then the comforting glow of the moon at night. But the light coming from the moon is an illusion. As you know, you're actually seeing the reflected light from the sun bouncing off the moon, which acts like a mirror. A really terrible mirror.
If you were on the surface of the moon, the color would be very similar to my shirt. It's actually mostly lava. The moon is entirely made of igneous rock. And so this is a lot like what it would be like if you were on a volcano or in a volcanic field here on Earth. The rock would be very dark. It's not new rock by any means. The moon would have mostly solidified a little over 4 billion years ago. The large, flat, darker areas, those are thought to be between 3 and 3.5 billion years old. The only thing that's kind of new is if you get a meteorite impact, and this will change the structure of the rock nearby. When you're looking at brighter spots on the moon, those are places that have been hit recently, and they haven't had time to undergo all of the erosion due to micrometeorites and the radiation from just sitting out in space without any atmospheric protection for millions of years.
Because of its dark color and bumpy surface, it only reflects about 12% of the light that hits it. Additionally, the amount of light we get from the moon depends on the point of its orbit. During its first and last quarters, the moon is half illuminated, but it's only 8% as bright when it's full. Just imagine the surface when it's only partly illuminated. When the sun is at a steep angle, the mountains cast long shadows. This makes the lunar surface much darker than when it's directly illuminated.
One of the reasons